Hi, John. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good. Nice to talk to you.
With my guests, I like to go back to the start, really. So, what was your childhood like, and when did music come into your life?
My child was very, very normal. I mean, it's like sort of lower middle class family. To a large extent, just I was born in Preston, although my family's from around where I live now. And I grew up a very, very happy life until my father died when I was about 12. Things kind of changed from there on, really. But I mean, it was still, pretty much, solid family. And I think music came in very, very early. I mean, I was obsessed. I'd be playing with my Lego on the floor on the carpet in the living room, and watching TV in the morning when I was, I think probably even preschool or whenever it was in holidays. And whenever the program was finished, because back in the day they weren't daytime TV didn't exist, so basically the children's programs for a little while, and then it was just trade test cards. And I used to know the trade test card music inside out. I knew where the next sequence would, and I knew the sequence. I knew what was coming up next. I could sing it, and I would actually know all of it. So there's those kind of things, that give you some idea that there's something going on. But I think it was really, I had two older brothers, and they they've had very different tastes from me in music, but we both got into David Bowie about the same time, and I think that was like 1972-ish, and I was about 9, and that became an obsession. And his first band, actually, first person I went to see live was David Bowie at Preston Guildhall, and around about 1973. There's some dispute as to which year it was, but it wasn't. It was kind of the Ziggy Stardust Stroke Aladdin Insane tour. So I think it was pretty much the last tour he did with the Spiders from Mars. So that was kind of very formative, my formative kind of musical thing. And it kind of, Bowie shaped so much of my taste, because as a Bowie fan, you very often check out who he's into. So the Velvet, Ziggy, all this stuff, and that kind of influence continued with the bands that I got into later on, which would be, I was very, very, very much early on into the kind of the punk thing, even though I was too young to really be going out and pogoing at gigs, as it were. We used to go to local ones, but I was very much influenced by the New York sound coming out at the time, and that kind of essentially what's been now described as post-punk. And nobody called it post-punk at the time, I don't think. It was just called it new wave. So that was really, really important for me. And at the same time, I was listening to the stuff that the bands I was into was listening to. So that kind of swung me around a lot more and I was interested in Black American, so this initially kind of mainstream, but increasingly more underground disco sounds, which made perfect sense with what I was into for us, as I was concerned with, in terms of what was post-punk and new wave. So that was kind of, and I consider that was, what year we're talking about then? We're talking about, 78, 79, 80. And it's literally only 10 years, less than 10 years later that I'm playing in the Hacienda in 1988, playing Acid House. So it's, as a kid, that's a long time. But when you look back, it's like, it's incredible that it was just, a matter of a few years, quite frankly, between those, that kind of period, that period of really an explosion of creativity in New York, because you've got disco, hip hop, and punk all happening roughly around the same time. I mean, the early 70s through. And I think that scene completely changed me. I mean, there's other things like German Kosmik or Krautrock, as it's unfortunately called, and a lot of dub reggae and stuff. But those are my kind of formative influences. Yeah,
You started out in bands, didn't you?
Yeah, I was writing with bands back in when I was like, I don't know, 13, 14. Not famously, none of them were famous. Blank Students was the one that I actually joined that did a John Peel session, and I managed to throw a hissy and storm out before the actual session because I wasn't keen on the direction of the band, the usual stuff, musical differences. So, but all that happened was they just copied my guitar riffs and put them in anyway. So it didn't make any difference. So, lots of interesting sort of left field. Sort of avant punk bands in Preston that I was kind of involved with one way or another, either and there's various cassettes that have emerged that were released at the time that I don't think I've got them anymore, but they're all quite interesting, I suppose, in a way. But I was doing my own stuff as well. As I mentioned before, my father died when I was younger, and I got a little bit of money from his insurance or whatever it was, some kind of legacy that the mother let me have early, and so I managed to buy a Revox A77, which is the BBC version of the B77, which is like you can multi-track with that. So I managed to get a drum kit to teach myself how to play drums. Used to do these mad sort of dubbing out, because I just used to do mad tapes with various effects and stuff. So that was kind of my solo stuff, if there's such a thing at the time. But generally, it was just kind of spiky avant pop sort of punk bands that were around in Preston at the time. And the names I can't remember. There was one band I was in that I decided the guys didn't really know how to play guitar, so I sort of taught them how to play guitar sort of roughly, and I did the drums. We did do a gig at a school, which was quite inspiring for a number of people. I think it was the Walltones started a band on the basis of seeing us live. But they went on to do quite successful. We weren't. We had a couple of gigs and then, collapsed. Yeah.
What was your introduction to acid house and techno? Can you remember?
Yeah. I mean, I was at university, and it was. I'd taken a year out because I wasn't well, and in that year, was still going to like the house parties and that kind of thing that were happening. There was absolutely fuck all happening where I lived. It's a beautiful place. It was done in Kent, in Whitstable, which is now a very des res. I mean, it was kind of just starting to become, a place to buy, as it were, out of London. So, but it was at the time, there was nothing happening, so it was quite boring, and I'd found myself sick of listening to the same music in the parties and stuff. I mean, there's that string to that sort of like string to the story, and also I think the girlfriend. There was two girlfriends involved, not at the same time. One that I'd become a good friend of. We'd split up, and we're still really good friends. And she's one that continues through the story in many ways, Francesca. And the other one, Bridget, was really into. I think she was very much into ID fashion, and she thought DJing was cool, because I think ID magazine were giving it the large about DJs, and it kind of a lot of that, and I think I'd read an article of Inclusion magazine on the way down. I think to actually was on the way down to go for an interview for university. Inclusion magazine was edited by Sheila Garrett. Sheila Garrett. I have to correct that one. I'm sorry, Sheila. Anyway, it was an article by a certain Dave Harvey. It's not the Dave Harvey of more recent fame, but it was all about New York DJs. And it was incredibly inspiring. So I think that would have been around about 1970, 1980. So I think they all kind of fed in. And as I said, this Bridget, girlfriend of mine, she wanted to be a DJ, and well, she didn't have the records, and I did, and but that wouldn't have been it. I mean, we decided to start a DJ. Me and Francesca decided a DJ kind of gang. And we call ourselves the Lucky Bag Crew, and it involved a local kid called Damien Harris, who was working in the local record shop. We actually had a record shop in Whitstable, which is quite incredible considering the size of the place. Damien Harris and Francesca and myself, Francesca and I, we did a few gigs, squat parties, and just the Labour Club. I think we did the Labour Club, the first gig ever in Whitstable, and we had Alan Davies, who's now a famous comedian. He was doing banana jokes on the mic. He was on his third year at drama at Kent University. And Damien Harris went on to set up Skid Records, as you probably know, many years later. So he's still in the industry. Francesca lives also in Brighton somewhere. I think she's involved in, I don't know what now, but that's kind of how I got into it. But it was, we generally played whatever we felt like at the time. It was, the first gig was playing Dionne Warwick next to Gang of Four, next to, a shimmering disco track. It was all over the place. And I got a little bit more, less, because we couldn't mix at the time. We didn't have decks that we could mix with. It was just really seeking between stuff as best we could, and the decks didn't come later till I moved to Manchester. So,
what were those early gigs like? Did you enjoy it straight away?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had actually done it before in a club in Preston called the Wag Club. The something like that. I've got, my memory's awful. Not the Wag. The Wag's in London. So it was. Yeah, it was a one-off, several nights I think we did like little DJ spots, but I was playing television and Talking Heads and pop group. You know, it wasn't again. It was like it wasn't exactly dance floor orientated in many ways. But yeah, absolutely got the bug completely, and that was, you know, kind of pretty much my downfall. You know, at university, I managed to get my degree and got a reasonable good degree, but I didn't do any work in the last year at all. Last year and a half, I was just obsessed with DJing. So, and so it came to leave, and I moved back up north. With a view to starting a club in my hometown, Preston, but it just didn't materialise. It didn't have the buzz that London had, or obviously Manchester had at the time, and we decided to move over to Manchester in January '88. We moved. That's me and Francesco again wanted to do a club together, and she managed to buy decks, which I promptly learnt to DJ on. So it's like in a matter of a few months, I actually got a job at the Hacienda. So I arrived in January '88, and by July I had a gig at the Hacienda. So it's kind of right place, right time, doing the right thing, you know. So it's quite, you know, I mean, it was not at the time. Not everyone their dog was a DJ. It was a small scene, you know, DJs. But and I just got some lucky breaks, you know.
How did you get that job at the Hacienda then? Did they see you performing somewhere else?
Yeah. So, well, it's funny because at the same time, Francesco got a job at the Hacienda working behind the bar. So I ended up, you know, we used to get the guest list all the time because of that. She was a bit of a favourite for everybody loved her. Luan Garnier was DJing there. He absolutely adored her, and Leroy adored her. Everybody adored her, you know. So I got to know Laurent because of that. And Laurent was leaving to do his national service, and he really wanted me to take over from him while he was away. It was planning to come back, etc. You know, so at the same time, with a bit unbeknownst to him, that I was seen by Paul Cons playing what was then a Stuffed Olives, which became South, South on King Street, on South King Street, in fact. Stuffed Olives on a Sunday night was it was illegal after hours, after 10:30. They put you know the bar mats over the you know just surfing the optics and what have you. So it was kind of funny, and that went on until about 3 or 4 in the morning, and just got away with it. I don't know how. It's literally around the corner from the police station. But I played there a couple of times. The second time I played there, I think Paul Cons came down, who's the promoter at the Hacienda, the kind of booker. In a party of Vidal Sassoon kids, you know, they were all out on a birthday or something with her, and he heard me play, and it was like, you're the man for me for the hot night they had planned, you know, which was the new Wednesday night, and it kind of took over from Zumbal, which was Laurent was doing with a guy called Mark Fizz. So that's it. It's just kind of, you know, my first, you know, from going from playing like little bars, you know, and squat parties to suddenly playing this, you know. I mean, I literally was shaking the first time I played. I was absolutely, and every now and then I do shake a little bit, I get a bit nervous, but this was incredible.
You know, when you mentioned you're on the guest list at the Hacienda, when you first went, what did you think of the place?
Well, I'd already been many times before. I've been to see lots of things happening there. I mean, I'm from Preston, so Manchester actually was more. I was drawn to Manchester more than Liverpool, and I've been coming to Manchester quite a lot to see bands and stuff, going back, you know, into my sort of early teens, mid-teens. So I've been to Manchester many times. It was always had that aura and that pull that was because of its connection with Factory Records, and I was a huge Joy Division fan and New Order fan, and you know I'd seen the first few gigs of New Order when they became New Order from, you know, being Joy Division. I saw Joy Division back in Preston as well, so it had that whole vibe about it, but it was always empty. So it was always quite strange, you know. If you're a red blood, well, I wouldn't use that term, but you know, if you're out with your mates and you're just looking to actually you know, see some girls, it wasn't the place to go because it was empty. You know, and I mean, when I moved to Manchester properly, as I say in '88, I would go out on a Friday. I'd have a list at the Hacienda, and I'd have a list at Dean Johnson and John Tracy's night down at the venue, the Limit. No, that's Sheffield. Oh God, my memory's awful. But yeah, and I would pivot between the two because it was fun to, you know, it was different crowds and different music. So that was a Friday night. So I kind of got to know Mike Pickering a little bit because I hang out in the DJ box, annoy him. Nothing's changed there. Still annoying him to this day. And it was, the Hacienda from that period, very different from when the whole thing kind of kicked off in sort of July '88, and it really became, suddenly the place was taken over by certain chemicals and a certain shift in the music policy. I mean, I certainly wasn't playing what everybody else was playing before on the Wednesday night, so I kind of shifted it. I know I did in certain respects. In other ways, it was more of the same. Mike carried on playing what he's always good at, which is obscure and interesting, dark Black American house music, But there was a little bit more push to the left, I think, for me. Looking back at the time, I wasn't aware of it. But if you look at the kind of playlist that sort of other people were doing, it's like clear. So yeah, it was a major shift. That I remember, and I've told this story many times. Just coming out the DJ box, I think it was second week of Hot, which would have been into July, almost the end of July maybe, and of '88, and just going, what the actual, because it was just, the atmosphere was just incredible. I mean, it's clearly not haven't seen people off the tits on pills before, so, and they were strong. So it was, and this energy that was there, which was, prior to that explosion of it was a case of people going, oh, I like this tune, I'll go and dance, and then they come off the dance floor and have a drink, and then, oh, I like this tune, I go on. This was just everybody on the dance floor from get go, boom, boom, boom. And that was just so exhilarating. Just like, what the hell's going on? And over the next few weeks, it just went like that, busier and busier, and and then the Fridays kind of took over in the sort of autumn. I mean, to be honest, it became a bit of a tourist spot. The students got back in September, October, and the Wednesday nights kind of was clogged up with people that didn't really know what they were doing, and it was just like, it kind of lost the edge in a way. So those are my sort of, I actually said we should do a student discount. We should charge them double just to keep them away.
Well, you mentioned you had the residency for the Hot Nights. Was it the first night where the swimming pool flooded the place? Well,
it didn't flood. It was just had a rather bad leak. I think Paul Mason, the manager, decided to move it while it was semi-full. So didn't like it at all. And it was a nightmare because it started leaking, and then you got people jumping in and out anyway with glasses of. There was no health and safety involved. So you got glasses going in. They're coming out. They're jumping on those glasses. They put the glass down, they jump out and stand on the glass. There's blood everywhere in the water. I mean, it sounds worse than it actually was probably, but it was a bit treacherous, put it that way. So after a few weeks, they just gave up on the swimming pool, and it got rid. I mean, there's other things that were happening when it first started Hot Night. They had like a cabaret, because Zumbar the previous Wednesday, it was kind of a cabaret vibe to that. It's kind of like European cabaret. So they'd have like acts, they'd have like trapeze artists, and like they'd have cheesy, like they had dollar playing, or they'd always have something kind of a bit kitsch, and they continued that with Hot, and they realized they didn't need to do it. After about 2 weeks, they had this spinning wheel, and Fred the caretaker came out and spun the wheel, and it hit on free bar. It was a free bar, and it happened once. And they were gutted because it cost them a fortune, but but they realised they didn't need to do that shit because it was just full and fucking going off without any interruptions from that kind of idiocy, Yeah.
How long did the Hot Nights last? It wasn't long, was it? Was it about 6 months?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't know exact dates, but it's about 6 months, and then it morphed into. Oh, it actually went on till Christmas, so it was 6 months. It didn't feel like Hot by Christmas for some reason. And I think after Christmas, we kind of morphed into a thing called Void, which was, because the Wednesday, we're talking about the winter now, and it just wasn't that busy on the Wednesday. I don't think it really worked. I don't think Mike's heart was in it. I was struggling. But then after that we did Shiva, which for some reason kind of, I think musically was one of the best, for me and Mike, one of the best combinations. I don't think I'll have much memory of it, but it was that was kind of fun. But That was going into. I mean, I was in the Saturdays at the time as well with Dave Haslam by this point as well. So it was kind of which was supposed to be a very different vibe musically. So it was much more disco vibe, much more Saturday night, which I find a little bit more difficult to do in certain respects, but it's fun. But yeah, I mean, it came to a point, and I know this because I was told by Paul Collins that there was a kind of a point of politics when it came to the shift after they closed, because I stopped working for them after they closed in '91. There was some issue about Mr. Haslam, and they didn't want to muddy the water by keeping me employed, as it were. So it was actually, I went at the same time he went. So it was kind of like, oh, cheers. I mean, that's a story that's not been told, and maybe I'd be in trouble for telling it, but that's how it was. I think the idea was that I would continue and work with Laurent when he came back.
Was it 91 when it closed because of all the gangs and gun violence?
Yeah, and it reopened, but the idea was it reopened because they said they can't, they couldn't continue, and guarantee the safety of staff and punters. And I don't think anything had changed when they reopened again, because I think they just needed to open because otherwise they couldn't pay the bills. But nothing seemed to change that much. They kept changing whoever was doing the door, and so a different set of gangsters, kind of took over. So, it was just, it wasn't just a Manchester thing. I know it happened all over the place, and it was like the response by some clubs in London was absolutely on top, and they would actually flush all the gangsters out. And actually, but it involved a lot of heaviness to be able to do that. You can imagine. So, and I just don't think anybody had the will or the way or the wherefore to actually do it in Manchester. There was just a trust with certain people that wasn't borne out in the end. It's just they trust some people to actually, I'll do this for you. In fact, they'd ended up being gangsters themselves. So it was quite frustrating and galling, because it's a great club and it was getting ruined. Its final demise is kind of, I always think it's a bit annoying, because really, if there was a problem financially, the council really should have seen the value of the place. We saw once it closed that there was a drop in student applications to Manchester and a rise in student applications in Liverpool, where Cream was now taking over. Do you know what I mean? It's an asset to any council, and they've got something like, it's like the Eiffel Tower of bloody Manchester. It's like I don't know. It's not quite the right metaphor, but it's a great advert for the city. And you've got a great club. People, it's important. I know I've got kids myself now. Growing up there, what's the club scene like in whatever city they're playing university to? They want to know. And most people didn't need to be told that Hacienda was like a beacon for so many, for so many generations. So, or so many, a generation or so anyway. So yeah, it was a bit galling that it was left to rack and ruin in a way, because. In the end, I say Rob Gretton, who was the main financier by the end of it, just had enough. It didn't owe that much money, but I don't think anybody wanted to continue with the drain on their own personal finances. But yeah,
could you see a shift then when, from say 88, 89 to 91, where the gangs did start coming in and the drugs and stuff? And
there's drugs involved in any scene, and be it going by, be it rock and roll, jazz, everything's got drugs involved in it. It's always been, people have always been raving one way or another, going back to the Druids. So it's when the drugs are actually, the gangsters smell the money. And it was too open in Hacienda for a while. I remember saying to Rob Gretton that this can't go on. People are openly selling in the club. So that kind of got kiboshed a bit, but it's still, they're already in there by then, So, yeah. You wouldn't notice it when it's a really, really busy night. It's only sometimes it would be a little bit, you'd be a little bit nervous getting there early and leaving at the end of the night. As a DJ, you get pushed around sometimes by guys, just showing them, just proving that they own the place, not you, kind of thing. Not that it's their place. But that happened to me a couple of times. But I don't. I only saw a little bit of like argy bargy, as you call it, you know, and that was the one guy wheeling around a chair, and it was early on a Saturday night, or I think it was. But generally, it was, you know, I missed most of the worst by not playing from 91 onwards. I missed most of it. I think it was, you know, I'd heard stories of guns going off and stuff, but I wasn't involved. I mean, I'd go down there still, but, you know, wasn't in there all the time like I was before.
There was the sad story that young girl died after taking ecstasy as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, it was awful. Yeah. But it's just really, really sad. I mean, I've not been witness, but I'm aware of so many deaths around the time. You know, and often it was poor. I mean, poor security. Often they just throw people out into the street. That wasn't the case with Claire, I know, but I know of incidents where some of these, you know, I mean, you had this thing when, you know, when I was 16, what lads did would go and, you know, or they go and prove themselves by drinking 18 pints and then throwing up, you know. This generation decided to buy 2 wraps of Whiz and 10 pills and do them all at the same time. And, you know, and I know that's on one occasion that ended up in a death. And that was, you know, but the Dom just threw the guy out onto the street and it was blue, you know, so he died in the street. That wasn't Hacienda. That was somewhere. I won't name names. That was another venue in the northwest. But yeah, it's not a good period. I mean, now I think we still get situations, obviously, with bad batches of stuff, and it's really the government should actually, you know, grab the bull by the horns and actually make sure everybody can get their drugs tested. You know,
yeah,
because they're going to take them anyway. So, you know, it's wrong not to look after your kids, basically.
You know, 88 and 89, that's like known as the second summer of love. What were those years like for you?
The things, I mean, it was, yeah. I mean, people say it was all about unity and stuff. I don't know. It was Manchester's very different from maybe elsewhere, but I mean, I seem to remember. Yeah, there was a mix. There was definitely a mix of people, but it used to be much more of a black club on a Friday than it was come 88. I met much of the crowd that used to dance at the Reno in Marseille. Started going to Mike Pickering and Martin Pendergast's nude night in sort of 86, 87. So, and that kind of shifted, the demographic shifted to, you know, away from that. So, you know, and also, like I say, the Wednesday night was very much previously kind of a gay mixed night, and that kind of went with hot, you know. So it's, you know, people put a gloss on the whole thing, being a summer of love. A summer of love, when you're taking an ecstasy, is, I think, more to the point. It's like you're loved up on ecstasy, not necessarily, you know. It might have changed a few people, but for how long I don't know. I certainly had a great time. And I mean, not just in Manchester, but in Glasgow. I have a very, very big soft spot for Glasgow. I spent a couple of years, I think, 89 to 90. I think possibly into 91. I can't remember, but it just I'd spend my. No, it would have been it would have been 8. Yeah, but I was doing a Saturday up there, so it must have been after 91. So it's maybe 90, 91. I mean, it was the Slam guys, you know, that run Soma Records now and everything, and I was the first guest DJ they booked, and I just fell in love with the place, and you know, I managed to get a residency on a Saturday with DJ Harry, who's now resident at the Sub Club, and we played Furry Murray's around the corner from the Sub Club. So I'd go up on a Saturday afternoon, come back on a Wednesday morning, because I'd stay at Ord Meikle's apartment. He would stay at his girlfriend. He just left me his apartment in Hillhead. So I'd stay there for 3 or 4 days and then come back to the Hacienda and then go back again on the Saturday. So I spent more time in Glasgow than I did in London for quite a while, you know. So I absolutely, I've got very fond memories of that whole period, you know.
Well, a big song from that era is Voodoo Ray by a song called Gerald. He gave you like an early mix of it, didn't it, to play at the Hacienda?
No, it was a promo, just a promo. So I don't. It wasn't a test pressing. It was a promo. So it was a white label. And I'd already been aware of him. So he was. I think Dean Johnson, who was one of the DJs at Hacienda, had wised me up to him, and I live just on the edge of Moss Side, literally by a street. I mean, it's Moss, whatever, you know. I lived just by main roads ground at the time. So he was allegedly lived around the corner from me, and I was convinced that, you know, I went up. I was always looking out to see if I could, well, walking through the streets there, so I could catch him and see if he was in his own studio. You know what I mean? And at the time, actually, house music wasn't omnipresent like it is now. I mean, if a car drove past playing house music, you were like, you know, you're like, wow. Or somebody in the house was playing house music. It was like, hey, who are they? You know. But yeah, Gerald was already a bit of a legend before he came to that DJ book's door to me. So I mean, he gave me that. I turned around and it was my turn to play, and I went put it straight on and played it. And he said he was walking down the balcony of Hacienda, wasn't even at the bottom of the stairs before I played it. So it was like, what the heck, you know. So yeah, that was quite a moment in many ways. I mean, obviously, you know, genius record, genius guy.
Was there a big reaction to it straight away?
Yeah. I suppose I remember. I mean, it was mayhem. So I mean, virtually. I mean, the thing about the Hacienda is that you might remember, it was as soon as there'd be such a reaction to the start of a tune when they realised a new one's coming in, that it was just, and the whistles, whistles was a big thing. So it's hard to hear the music half the time. So it was just, yeah. I think you had to be right in the middle of the dance floor to be able to hear what was going on. But and it became a firm favourite from there on. So
would people do that a lot? Like bring their track for you to play?
Yeah, you get the odd independent, and you go, you know, they weren't Gerald. So I wouldn't play them straight away. You know, it was like, no, I have to listen to this before I play it. And then they get loads of guys from London coming up, the promo guys, and they start to really piss me off because they go, no, here you go, play this. And it's just the start of the night and going, I don't play any of this till I've listened to it. It's like, you know, and it's always major labels would send the guys because Hacienda became the place to be, and they're all trying to get gigs there themselves, these promo guys, you know. They all were like, you know, want to be DJs or semi-pro DJs, whatever you want to call them. And it's like, they were trying to edge in as well. And they were just, you know, treating it like a jukebox. It's like, no, I don't play stuff I don't like. I'm not playing stuff, just, you know, that's not how it works. I will take it home. I'll listen to it and I might play it next week if I like it. Only if I like it.
Would that determine your like set list then? Like you had to like it to play it?
I try things out all the time. I mean, it was, you know, I got to know the crowd really well, and there was different factions in there. There'd be certainly I remember the Stoke crew looking at the stage on the right hand side of the stage. And they often were kind of the litmus test for me. I'd actually drop stuff, and if they liked it after a couple of nights, then I know it was going to be a big one. You know, it's going to work. Or they'd often instantly like something that was brand new, because you imagine that they're not here. This is new music to everybody, you know, and there's not many places you can hear it. Well, the record shops and maybe Stu Allen, you know, on the radio. So it was. It was a time when people would accept like brand new music hitting them every week, and I'm listening out for it, and also across genres. There wasn't there's that snobbery about genres back then. You know, you played everything from, you're playing hip hop, you're playing techno, you're playing house, you're playing jacking house, you're playing acid house, which still isn't a I mean, early on I played more diverse stuff, like sort of 9 o'clock till 11 or 10:30, whatever. But from there on, it was that kind of, you know, cross genre thing happening. So yeah.
You're well known for being ahead of your time with your mixing and your acapellas. Where did you get this unique sound?
I don't think it's that unique. I mean, I was aware of people doing it. I mentioned an article, Inclusion magazine, about New York DJs. So I'd read a bit about Larry Levan and heard some tapes and stuff. I mean, I kind of, it was that and a sort of interest in sound effects. I loved the sound of found sound. And the BBC sound effects albums were just absolutely, I could listen to like an album, you know. I just find them absolutely, you know. So I was mixing in the sound of thunder and stuff, but that made sense because it was hot night, and there was always some kind of stupid reason why I would do things, and I was at the Bubbling Brook and all sorts of things I'd throw in, the sound of Bubbling Brook and then Thunder. But it was great. I mean, not to be honest, often we were I'd say inexperienced. I was certainly experienced DJ, and you find yourself working the way up on the various speeds to the point where you couldn't get the next record in because it was too slow for the previous one. So you go to a break. So I'd cut into a break, and actually it might be some kind of sound effect that I got from an album, and then mix it with something, and then something else, just to create an interlude, and then start again. You might want to play hip hop after playing loads of house. So the acapellas, it was actually Norman J, MBE, and he'd asked me to come down and play for him at High and Hope in Camden. And he gave me this copy of Acapella Anonymous, Volume 1. And on it was, there was Love Sensation. So that actually ushered in me playing Love Sensation, the original track, just before Black Box came out with their rework of it, as it were. So there was, I was thinking I was using acapellas over bits of stuff as well. But it was always acapellas that came with. There were always acapellas that came on the 12 with something else. It wasn't necessarily classic acapellas. It was stuff that was out at the time. So you would throw over You Used to Hold Me, for example. I think it was, odd things like that. And I think that just became, I don't know whether I'd heard it before, or it certainly wasn't anything original that I'd done. I know that for sure. I didn't even invent that, that's for sure. But it certainly inspired a lot of people,
Well, you mentioned inspiring people. Sasha says you were like a mentor for him. Wasn't he used to come right in your flat and say, listen to this and stuff? Yeah,
he lived the floor below me, so he managed. It was a house on the very bottom of Alexander Park in Manchester, Whalley Range, and there was the guy that ran Shelley's lived below, and his partner Tony, bless him, who's passed now. Hippie Tony, he'd kind of taken Sasha under his wing and found in the flat in the same building, so because he knew it was available, and they managed to get a deposit together for him and get him in there. But I kind of met Sasha at Eastern Bloc Records, and we got on, and it was like, but he was, I'd go and see him in his apartment, and he'd have he had about that many records, and he would do it at his decks. And every Wednesday, or probably after a Wednesday, and probably on a Friday, he'd come up with a cassette and give me the cassette, and it'd be literally my set for Wednesday. He'd copied it, and without minus the records he couldn't buy because they were too obscure, whatever, but he just simply copied my set, and that's how he kind of learned to structure, and I suppose. And he says he just stood in front of the DJ box and watched me DJ. That's what he did every Wednesday night. So. We worked, I did actually get him into the Hacienda sneakily. I gave him half my set, I think, one Wednesday. Said, come in, you start at 9, and he absolutely banged it. He played every big tune at 9 o'clock. And it's to this day he's embarrassed about that. No, I think he's got over it by now. Yeah, that's quite funny. But yeah, he's a lovely bloke. He's a lovely, lovely guy.
You mentioned you were a fan of New Order. What was it like going on tour with them?
Amazing. Yeah. It was loads of fun. They must have been in their early 30s. I was a little bit younger. I must have been about, so it was, they were all in good spirits. It was a fun, well, to a large extent, they were in good spirits. And it was fun. They were fun to be around. I traveled with the band. Generally travel with the band on flights and stuff, and occasionally, and then the limos and stuff. But my hooky used to always travel with the techies. So strange enough, so that's where he liked to hang out. But just there are lots of fun stories from that period. I only did a few dates in the States, but I've done loads with them since then. But it was like really fun time, and seeing them playing to like 40,000 people. You kind of well up because it's kind of your home pride, it's like this your kind of local band. It's just, and then and a band I'd followed for years, and so yeah, from being an absolute monumental fan of Joy Division, their first album's still one of my favorite albums of all time. To be kind of mates with them was kind of cool, and getting to know them and getting to know Rob Gretton, the manager, was special.
Do you know, like, when you're DJing for the band, for them to come on, like, warming the crowd up, would you approach that different to, say, a night at the Hacienda?
To a little bit. I mean, the thing is, you don't have to worry too much about, I mean, dare I say, upstaging the following act, because you've got the volume down so low. You know, it's like, I mean, the gigs I did in the States with them, it was like, you know, we went out, it was like a car stereo volume. It was like, nobody could hear it. I mean, it was just like so quiet. You know, that was the attitude, and that was really the promoter's choice, not the band's, not anybody related to. It was always promoter in the States who go, no, it's not, can't be too loud, and people want to talk. You know, they want to talk, they want to eat the burgers, and they want to, you know, it's like, yeah. So, but it's quite frustrating. We were really there. We weren't really there to play before the band. We were there to do the after shows.
Right, yeah.
We'd let the hair down, and it was, yeah, and it would be quite fun, you know. Yeah. So we did some great after shows there, but I mean, when I played for them more recently, I played for them in Stockholm a few years ago, and absolutely, I had, you know, there was decent volume, and it was like, then you think about pacing the set and building it, and obviously you're warming up for a band, so you don't. Same with, I did 2 tours with the Happy Mondays, and the same thing there. I'd start really, you know, it'd be, you know, I would not play anything that sounded like the Mondays. So I wouldn't play anything indie. And like, people go, why aren't you playing any indie music? But because that's what the fucking band does. you want a contrast. I'm not here to entertain. I'm not here to basically, you know, it's not a bloody student disco. It's like, you have booked me to play, so I will play what I want to play, and I will, you know. And the idea was that, you know, to actually get the crowd up for it. But the sound of guitar coming in would be really exciting for them when the band came on stage. If all they've heard is, you know, guitars for the last 2 hours, then, do you know what I mean? It has to have. I think you have to have that kind of contrast.
Yeah.
To you know, and as I say, people knew that I was Hacienda DJ, so they expect Hacienda music to an extent, you know. So I'd work out sets that would tease them a little bit towards Hacienda, but wouldn't give it all away, because I don't, you know, I'm you know, everybody's a little bit tired of those kind of assumptions about what you play when you're Hacienda DJ, and it's you know, it's been an albatross in certain respects. You know, it's most people have. So many people think that Hacienda DJ plays a certain kind of music. I've never been to the fucking Hacienda, you know, and I only wanted you to play old music when the Hacienda was all about new music, you know.
Yeah. Well, speaking of touring, what was it like going on tour with Todd Terry and Roger Sanchez?
Oh, that was, yeah. We did about 3 or 4 dates, and it was the first Strictly Rhythm Records tour. And I think Todd was in a bit of a lull, so I don't think he wasn't that big in the UK at the time. You know, he's gone to the top of the fucking tree again now, but. And Roger Sanchez was a young pop DJ. I mean, he must have been still in his late teens, I think. I don't know. But we did a few dates, and the one I vividly remember was Aberdeen, and which was, I've got a fly on my screen. Go, piss off, fly. Which was great fun, and I think that's the time Roger Sanchez decided I was the Tony Humphries of the UK scene. For some reason, he decided I was the, you know, next best thing to slice bread. But the journey back was hilarious. The promoter was a bit of a fly-by-night idiot. He'd convinced them they'd be able to get to London by 6 o'clock in the evening to do some, I don't know what, more gigs, I think. And we're in Aberdeen, and we didn't get up till 12. So we've got to get from Aberdeen to London in 6 hours. It then got more complicated when I think I was in the car with Roger Sanchez, and the other car had Todd Terry in it, and we managed to stop at the services outside Newcastle, you know, the south side of Newcastle, Washington, whatever it is, services, and the promoter managed to lock his keys in the car at a time when so we were stuck there for 2 hours trying to get the keys out of the car, and just smashing the window to get the keys. And so Todd Terry's mood had changed considerably over, and there's clearly no way they're going to get to. I think we got to Manchester, and Sanchez came into my apartment in Wally Range so he could use the toilet before we carried on, and that was like 10 o'clock at night. So yeah, it was interesting. I mean, it was cool, obviously, to be involved in the Street Rhythm thing. Absolutely, you know, it's the great label. I mean, I was chuffed to be asked because they knew how much I was involved with them from the get go. You know, playing their music. So, but yeah, funny tour. Not all things work out that well.
Your DJs took you all over the world. Were you one of the first British DJs to play in China?
Yeah, allegedly. I think, I don't know whether Oakenfold got there before me, but basically me or Oakenfold were the first to play. I suspect he was. I mean, it's just, I mean, I'm not. It's not like I'm going, yay! It was interesting though. I mean, because I've been playing. I think it was after. It was after I'd done 3 months residency in Hong Kong. Pretty sure. And I got to know Andrew Bull one way or another. Andrew Bull's promoter. He was originally from Hong Kong, was based in China now, or back and forth, I guess. And they booked me for a club in Beijing called Vogue. And it was run by a guy called Henry. Henry was the first guy. He set up the first bar, a sort of Western style bar on a street in Beijing, and that became known as Bar Street. I don't know what it was called before then, but now it's just up to the whole street's just bars. And it kind of, the first glimmers of sort of Western influence, as it were, coming in terms of that kind of culture. And he started a club called Vogue. I mean, at this point, you come out of the club. I remember popping out of the club, and it's 5 a.m, and the street's full of bicycles, people just cycling to work. And that must have been early 90s. And then I've been playing ever since, you know, on and off. And now it's all, you know, it went from there to everybody's got a scooter, and everybody's got a cart, everybody's got electric cars, everybody's got electric scooters, and it's like over 20 years of difference in China is remarkable. The absolute, you know, the amount of change that's happened economically and demographically has been incredible, you know. But quite interesting sort of see. I mean, I you become aware of the corruption in clubland. The police are owned by the bar owners and owned by the clubs. You know, they pay them off so they don't get raided and they don't get things shut down. And it's really happens all over. But it became really obvious in China to me that it was, you know, an interesting situation to say the least. But yeah, it was. I mean, it's now. I've got friends who still go out there. I'm not sure, you know, I've got the energy to spend traveling that far anymore for a few gigs. But I've got Joshy from Isle of Acid, who I work with. He's been out there probably 3 or 4 times in the last year or so and loves it, you know. I mean, I would like to get out there, but it has to be a longer tour than a couple of dates, you know.
Yeah, yeah. What are some of your favourite places that you've played over the years?
People ask me, what's your favourite club? What's your favourite place? To be honest, I love. This sounds really sad, and I love playing Manchester. Maybe because I was away in Stockholm for about 9 years, and kind of dropped out of the scene in many ways over here. I mean, I would come over and play, but it was coming back in 2019. It was being able to play what I want to play in Manchester is a great joy for me. And I think the recent gig I did with Gerald actually for the guys from Resonate at the Yard, I think it was in February sometime. And that was just absolute joy to actually, because I kind of started, you know, I didn't warm up, but I was, you know, I did, it was an afternoon gig. So you just saw the crowd coming and just slowly really getting into it, you know. And that's just one of my favorite gigs of the year so far. It's just, I think because it's just, you know, playing to people, I read the crowd best. It's Manchester, you know. I struggle to read the crowd maybe in London as much as I would in Manchester. And I certainly, you know, I see that with DJs from out of town. They don't read the crowd the way that they should do. You know, should be able to do. It's often difficult if you don't. You pick up the wrong. You get the wrong. You might get the wrong end of the stick with the way people are reacting to your music. And it's Manchester. I know inside out. So I always enjoy playing Manchester. Full stop. Which is good, isn't it? Because I live here.
Did you play a lot of like illegal raves back in the day, like warehouses and fields and stuff?
Yeah, I did a lot of fields. I didn't get a gig at the Blackburn raves. I went, and every time I went, either the place got raided or we crashed the car. I think it was like 2 occasions I went. I gave up after that. This literally, yeah, it's not clever. It's not clever to drive. I wasn't driving. Somebody else was driving, and she wasn't necessarily probably in a good state to do so, and she didn't quite crash it, but she kind of swerved on the motorway. They decided to turn around at that point, but another time went, and it just been raided. I was, we got the message, don't come, because it's been done. But I was working on generally on a Friday and a Saturday, so you wouldn't leave till 2 a.m. anyway to get to them. So I suppose a lot of people did that, but I did a lot of I did Live the Dream, Joy. I did. Oh, what's the one in Preston called? Can't remember. There was the loads, and then down south as well. I did a few airfields. Again, it's a distant memory of aircraft hangars and tents. Yeah.
Have you got any favourite raves or nights that you went to as a punter?
I didn't go much as a punter, I suppose. I was always working. I mean, yeah. I mean, the ones that I mean, I think one of the most important memories, I mean, of kind of experiences, we're in Detroit with New Order, and I went to the Music Institute, which was the techno club at the time, which was Derek May and Alton Miller and the other guy, but they were all involved in that. And Derek was playing, and he was using tapes, and he was using reel-to-reels, and just going to tape and playing edits he'd done, and that was just really exhilarating to see him. And Derek at the time was ahead of the game so much. I mean, he was just so on it as a DJ. I mean, he's got one piece of vinyl in, and he's got the next one straight away, and he's cutting between the two. It's just creating something fresh out of it, and that was just something to behold. And even though it wasn't a particularly busy night, it was just a life-changing experience to see that happen in Detroit.
Yeah. Well, you still play today doing gigs. What's the scene like these days?
Encroaching corporatism is the issue, but I mean, generally, I'm having a great time. I always get, the scene's become a bit of a simulacrum of what it used to be. It kind of starts to feel like corporates are just setting up so it looks like a really cool thing to happen, and it's actually corporate as fuck, and I just you get that attitude. The way that DJs have been treated often is it's increasingly like a corporate activity rather than they're not, everything's been cut down. Your guest is cut down, your bride is cut down, your time on the decks is cut down. All of it's and then it's just no, we're not paying deposit, no, we're not doing this, no, and it's no, you're not getting any travel. It's and it's loads, they're just squeezing it for everything they can. I like working with great promoters, with people who are enthused by the music, and that's the most important thing. And thankfully, there's still a lot of people doing that. But because the scene has shrunk to an extent, because the venues have gone since COVID, whether by accident or by design, we're losing, hundreds of venues a month, and that's a shame for local. I mean, I got into clubs in my hometown in Preston, and then and increasingly so in Manchester, because you get to know the local DJs, you get to know the kind of infrastructure of the scene, how it works, and that's not happening anymore for small towns. There isn't anything to go to, so all you're drawn into is the big corporate things that happen in the bigger cities. So that's your impression of club culture. I mean, it isn't really what it was about. So that's a sad state of affairs, really. But there's still great people doing great things. So cling on to that. I do,
Yeah, exactly. And have you got any shows coming up that you'd like to let people know about?
So Friday this week, I'm doing. I'm just got a cancellation of the Sunday gig, but the Friday gig is Glasgow at the Berkeley Suite, and that's my continuing residency with Isle of Acid. I'm playing with Paro from Mexico. I'm my best bud, Posthuman. We're doing a back-to-back for the first few hours. We've got, say, Paro's, she's coming over from Mexico. Probably not doing it from Mexico, probably via Berlin. but she's playing, and that's the first time we've had her play for us. I think our first trip to Glasgow, maybe. And then I've got I think a daytime event at Gorilla, I think the following week, which is interesting. I think that's kind of coincided with the Gallagher brothers being in town. So I think they're hoping there's going to be quite a few people in town daytime wanting to have a bit of a party. We'll see. And then we've got Beat Herder as well. So Beat Herder is on the 18th. I'm doing that with Joshu from his post team with Isle of Acid. And we're doing the Friday night in the Fortress stage just before Dave Clark, which is pretty cool. So those are the exciting moments this month for me, DJ wise. And then we've got, let me think, into August. I've got something. I've kind of got involved with Beloit Burger recently, so I'm doing a couple of things with Beloit Burger. I've got one coming up at the end of the month in Rochdale. Then I've got Kendall Calling, and then August is just it's just madness. I can't. It's just a full on August, which is fantastic. Ending with, I think we're doing a Hacienda thing at Freight Island at the end of the month on my birthday, and I'm playing Edinburgh the same night, so it's going to be quite a bit of driving on my birthday. So yeah, it's a busy month. And then we've got the Hacienda thing in September at Walton Hall in Cheshire. So that's another big one. But yeah, it's looking forward to it. Loads of good things happening.
Yeah, brilliant. Is there anything I've not mentioned that you'd like to mention?
Yeah, there's some music coming out. I've got a track coming out on with my music partner in Sweden, Jonas Nilsson. We've got a track out on Mighty Force Records. I don't know when it's coming out because I think it's July, but we're in July. What am I talking about? It's July now. So I'm chasing it up. It's a track called I Got Some, and it's under the name of Jon Dasilva's Skyscraper, or Skyscraper, which is the Swedish pronunciation of it. So, or approximation of it anyway. And then there's some stuff coming out on Hotware Records, which I'm just finishing at the moment. A load of stuff. And then hopefully August we'll finally get the label going. So I was been planning to have start a label for, it's been a year now. Things have got in the way a little bit. So Black Dragon Sound will hopefully launch in August, September. And there'll be bit of a radio show to go with it, and the usual merch and all the rest of it, and hopefully a lot of vinyl. So those are the kind of the short-term plans at the moment. So that's what's happening. Yeah.
Thank you for your time. It's been great to speak to you.
Yeah, lovely. Nice to talk to you, mate.
You too. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. See you.
Bye. Bye.